it makes a lot of sense, and it's probably some savings financially as well.
Right. Yeah. Any further questions?
No, hope you guys have a great time.
Okay. Everything goes through for you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for a great presentation on it. We all enjoy. Okay. Move on to extended COVID-19 learning plan check-in.
Yes, we don't have any changes to how we're intending to deliver instruction. April is continuing very much like March did, and we don't really intend to change things for the remainder of the school year. The vast majority of our students are learning in person, and we have just a few who are choosing the online option and a few who are choosing the distance learning option, meaning that they are remotely learning with their same classes and their same teachers, but they're at home. So no changes expected there, and our two-way interaction rates remain pretty high, 96%, 98, 97, and 96 for the month of March. Any questions?
How do we compare with other schools with this two-way interaction rate? It's not nice and high.
Some schools are high like ours. We've been steadily high the whole way through. I know at first some other schools struggled a little bit more with that, but because most of the schools, all of the schools in the Copper Country are doing in-person learning, we all attribute our strong engagement rates to that. And it's the students who are not the in-person learners who usually are in this percentage, but not always. We do have some who have been really successful at the remote learning, the distance learning, and so that is a good thing too. It's online students who are more of a concern and are in that percentage, but also included in that percentage are just students who are absent. So the lowest number there, the 96, was when one of our large families was on a family trip. And so several kids were just absent. We wouldn't expect them to be engaged that week.
Thanks.
Any other questions? So it looks like we have to have a recommendation to approve this month's confirmation on how instruction will be delivered.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
All right. Any discussion further? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, all abstained. Motion carries. All right. Moving on to public comment. Do we have a public comment? Zach, yep,
3 minutes or
5.
5? Okay, just making sure I understand my time constraints. Good evening. For those who don't know, my name is Zachary Hulkala. I'm the proud parent of Noah, Alex, Landon, and Lily Hulkala, all of which are educated through the dollar-based system in one way or another. Alex is up in the ISD up at Hancock. So first off, I want to say thank you guys for the transparency, the dialogue, the ability to do this, the wonderful facility we're in. Thank you guys for your leadership, and that's part of the reason why I'm here this evening. And I never write everything down because it always changes right at the last minute, and I have to make this statement real clear. Within the COVID-19 testing program for athletics, they're very clear about a participant code of conduct, which I refuse to sign for my children. In the bottom bullet, it says, inside and outside practice and competition, I will follow all state and local health orders that apply in my area, include wearing a face mask around others, limitations on gatherings outside my immediate household, including non-team gatherings and social gatherings with my team outside of practice or competition. Understand that failure to follow to do this could result in removal of my competition from practices and may result in disqualification of my entire team. I just sat there and listened to us talk about a senior trip, and my heart just sunk because my son is not running track right now because of something that you guys have to enforce, driven upon us by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. That's wrong. That's very wrong. My heart breaks every day he can't swing a golf club and can't run an 800 that he couldn't finish 2 years ago. I apologize if I get a little bit emotional, but you guys know me, we're friends here. We probably BS more over a beer than I hope to tonight. But I would like your support in pushing back on this. I would like you to continue dialogue with other ADs, with other school districts, and ask how many of your parents are not participating in this. How many kids are going to fall through the system and end up playing video games rather than out doing something they enjoy because their parents choose an alternative form of health? We sign a waiver that this state allows us to sign to not follow some of the procedures and protocols followed for certain things up front in order to meet school obligations. And now we're signing up for a voluntary program, right? This isn't a consent to play sports, we're volunteering for a program. And I'm not asking for anyone to answer here, I may be asking for you to continue with questions when you leave here tonight, much like I have. But if you're volunteering for a program, how does that qualify with FAPE, right? How is this allowing free access to my son because he won't volunteer? That's wrong. And I hope you can recognize somewhere in my dialogue this evening that this is worth questioning the state on their directive on this. I'm not aware of any other states making this requirement mandatory for high school kids. And here's real irony, I get to pick up my son from basketball practice because he's not old enough to qualify to volunteer for the program. That doesn't make sense in my opinion. Sorry, I'm ranting. And those of you who know me well know I tend to do that often when I get emotional. And again, I come to you asking for support, and that's why I'll make sure to dial it down. I best use emotion sometimes to maybe trigger your emotions. This is breaking my absolute heart. I don't agree with some of the decisions made, but I'm gonna support people that make them voluntarily under consent. Okay? These kids, read the back of your swabs. They're sterilized, right? If you don't care and you think it's safe, that's great, but people have the right to question that sterilization, potentially using ethylene oxide as that sterilizer, which it only causes cancer if you breathe it in. Thank goodness we're not putting it in our nose. Again, I'm looking for support. I'm not blaming anyone here for complying with the rules that are shoved upon them. But I'm asking for your support to question these rules as a board that we elect. And we come to as friends, and we ask for when we absolutely need to. And you guys know if there's a sports booster thing, I'll be one of the first ones to cut a check. My dad's done it for years. And I'm not turning my back on this team at all. What I'm asking for is there's a kid on the bench right now that doesn't deserve to be. I asked him tonight, I said, Noah, go get your run in. He said, Dad, the guys aren't running tonight, they're going for a meal. I'm like, you can't go to a meal with your team because you don't elect to consent to something? Does Dad have to spend another 6 hours trying to find the language in there? I hope not. So, in closing, I love all you guys, even the ones I disagree with at times. You know, we work hard for this community and we're growing it. But let's not leave my kid and other parents that, even though they're going through the program, disagree with it strongly, but they're not willing to take it away from their kids. Maybe I've got a different hard line to draw because some problems we've had with some of our kids. But I appreciate the opportunity to come in front of you tonight and ask for some assistance. I strongly ask that you consider pushing back, make sure I got my notes here and didn't miss anything, on the necessity of this requirement against the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services of testing healthy kids to play sports. It's unnecessary, and I'd ask for your support. Thank you all very much. Be safe. God bless you all. I mean that. I mean, this is my home. I fight hard to protect this. You know, you guys are all important to me, and that's why I'm here standing up being emotional tonight. I care. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Zach. I'm not sure if Mrs. Norland has shared the recent email that I sent to her concerning some items that were weighing heavily on my mind. I'm willing to provide each of you with a copy of my email and the attachments that I sent to her. The first thing I would like to address is the decision that was made concerning the Salutatorian for the class of 2020, as that award was given to a student that was ranked third, based off of the following. Since I had always figured out the ranking for students at the end of the year, I realized that the Salutatorian position was very close between the second and the third ranked students. I looked over the students' grades very carefully so I could determine which student would be the second place ranking. I noticed the student that was currently in second place had 2 weeks on his transcript for work experience. It was then that I contacted Mr. Cantala to ask if he had received the student's grade from his work experience supervisor. Mrs. Norland states that, quote, Jessie was the teacher. Certified teachers are the ones who determine grades for our students, not secretaries, not administrators, unquote. If Jessie is the one who determines the grades, why do we give a grade sheet report to the supervisors to complete? She also states, quote, Jesse determined the student's grade for the work experience course based on both his performance at the job site and his performance related to his dollar-based student responsibilities such as submitting required paperwork in a timely fashion, unquote. The student supervisor gave him a perfect score and was actually so impressed with him that he hired this student after graduation. Based on work experience, what justification is there to lower his grade from an A to a B? How many times did Jesse go to this job site to evaluate the student? And wouldn't Jesse make a decision based off the student supervisor that the student worked with every day? Jesse's duties at school were overwhelming, as he was teaching, coaching, counseling, amongst many other duties. I find it hard to believe he would have had the time to make on-site visits. If he did, I'm formally requesting dates, notes he made, and the number of times that he visited the job site. I'm aware of another student's grade sheet with the very
Karen, I'm
same
sorry to interrupt you.
circumstances.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Karen, but this sounds like this is more a personal issue with people, not something that,
Can you repeat,
We can
can you
resolve
say
it
it
here
louder,
tonight.
please?
it's something that you would need to take up personally with the individuals, more than a board thing.
I'm addressing the board.
I realize that, but these things like issues that would be addressed personally with the people that you are talking about.
So would you like her to contact the parents that were involved with this and get everybody going?
Or
She should be able to address the board, so you guys are aware of the problems. It's a simple thing, it's public comment, she should be able to make it.
As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
If you have a complaint against an individual, you should make a public complaint, and we do have a process for that.
that's all I'm trying to say, we need to,
I
okay,
thought
go
I
ahead,
did do what
Go ahead.
due diligence, and
go ahead, Karen.
I'm now talking to the board.
Okay.
I'm aware of another student's grade sheet with the very same circumstances, and this student's grade was lowered from an A to an A minus. And some students' grades were not lowered at all. There was no consistency in the lowering of the grades, and none of them were even ever lowered at full grade. Mrs. Norland also states that, quote, she and Jesse were both very surprised in this particular case that I decided to issue the student's grade rather than deferring to Jesse, unquote. I did contact Jesse, and he chose to contact Mrs. Norland instead of the supervisor. Because neither Mrs. Norland nor Jesse made any attempt to contact the supervisor of the work experienced students, as Jesse had done multiple times in the past, I contacted all of them, trying to do Jesse a favor by helping him to finally get a completed grade for the students. Technically, the grade was not an incomplete, as he had completed all of the work. All we were waiting for was the grade sheet from the the supervisor. The incomplete was entered as a formality on the students' report cards and transcripts because the supervisor had not completed the paperwork and returned it to Jesse. Mrs. Norland's argument is that collecting the final grade sheet paperwork was the student's responsibility. In what other circumstance where students are leaving the building for educational purposes are they required to obtain the paperwork to determine their grade? We contact Michigan Tech, we contact Finlandia, Believe Community College, the career tech teachers to get the students' grades. Why then did we have to go and have the student collect the grade for work experience? Again, where's the consistency? Why are you putting the responsibility on the work experience student? I've noticed many times when Mrs. Norland has placed blame on others, and here's an example. She clearly blames or credits Jesse for the grade change, yet Jesse contacted her when I brought this to his attention, and she sent me an email saying the third place student would be our salutatorian. This decision was made prior to getting the grade sheets from the supervisor. I also have an email from Jesse that states he agrees with her decision. If either one of them had contacted the supervisor or waited until the grade sheet had been turned in based off of the grade the student supervisor gave him and without the penalty, this student would have clearly been our salutatorian. I find it to be suspicious that the grade was lowered from an A to a B. to help validate the final GPA to move the third place student as a salutatorian. In other words, Mrs. Norland manipulated the numbers so the final GPA would line up with her decision. I stated to her prior to this that numbers don't lie, people do. Both of these gentlemen in the second and third place rankings were outstanding students and outstanding kids, but I firmly believe in doing things with integrity and honesty. If Mrs. Norland were confident with her decision, why didn't you contact the students' parents to tell them that the salutatorian award was taken away from their son due to his lack of responsibility in collecting a grade sheet? Have they been notified yet? I ask you, the board, how would you feel if this were your child? In speaking with the former principal that I worked with, it was agreed that we would never have done this to a deserving student. And in my 32 and a half years at the school, we didn't until now. Second thing I'd like to address is the Borsum property. Mrs. Norland states, quote, "Nothing was amiss about some of us from the school and a few others then inquired about going over to the Borsum house after closing to grab some things before the demolition took place, and it certainly wasn't a secret," unquote. If it wasn't a secret, how come I didn't know about any of it until I received a phone call from Bob Borsum stating that thousands of dollars of his property were missing? And if it were not a secret, why weren't other staff members aware of this? I wasn't alone in not knowing that I wouldn't have stayed, and I would have stayed clueless to any of it if it weren't for Bob's call. There wasn't a staff notification sent permitting everyone to participate. Mrs. Norland clearly admits it was a secret in this following statement. Quote, "We discussed letting more people know that they could get any items they wanted before the house and everything in it were destroyed, but we realized safety might be a concern, and we decided against doing it," unquote. First off, who's we? Who decided? Furthermore, if safety was a concern, why was it okay for some of the school, and if you wanted to go and grab things, do it? Wasn't safety a factor then? But here's the point that Mrs. Norland's missing. Mrs. Norland does not own the Borsum house nor its contents. The house and all of its contents were owned by the school and its taxpayers. I can assure you that the taxpayers did not give permission for a few people to, quote, "grab some things before they wanted before demolition," unquote. Since we know there were things of value in the home, why weren't these items offered for sale to the community to help raise money for school supplies or other expenses? By grabbing a few things that didn't belong to them, what would you call that? If a person walked into a store and they grabbed some items that they wanted and didn't pay for them, what would you call that? I know people in this community are not okay with knowing the administration from the school and others are capable of taking things that do not belong to them. What repercussions would there be if staff members took things from here? As a concerned citizen and taxpayer, not to mention a former employee that has witnessed a lot in my 32 and a half years of employment, I expect our school board to seriously address these items and others that have been brought to your attention, including the no trespass order against 2 innocent taxpayers that have been banned from the school because they're perceived to be a nuisance by administration. That's an ugly stain on the reputation of our school. Someone shared this with me recently and I wanted to share it. Never let someone who did you wrong make you think there's something wrong with you. Don't devalue yourself because they didn't value you. Know your worth, always. Before I end this, I want to go on record to thank Mr. O'Connor and the DBTC publications class, as Bill's contacted me to tell me that the 2021 yearbook will be dedicated to me. It's humbling. I feel blessed and honored. And I really, really do care about this school. And I love all the students. And I love all of you. Thank you.
I have a public comment. need to set it up so I can see myself. Thank you for your patience.
If you put it on this table, will it be close enough?
Yes, is it
You
acceptable?
put it right here or there?
Is it acceptable?
Yeah.
That's fine.
I'm trying to turn it around so it gets me. Pardon?
Just spin the whole thing around, don't worry about it. Yeah, that's all.
Can you see me?
Your wrist, but
Right
no.
now, you'd have to be sitting down, I think,
Okay.
before
Yeah,
we
well,
can
let me
actually.
know if we see it.
Okay,
Oh, I
now,
see your legs.
Can you turn
Yeah.
it so you see me?
There.
here,
Yep, you're good, Cindy, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
This can flip different angles.
Yeah, you can maybe support it.
Guess not.
it's not, I was gonna say, it's not gonna go far enough. That's all right,
If you hold it,
Okay.
we'll be good.
oh, it'll be good.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm,
You're set? I'm set?
yep,
Okay. My name is Cindy Barth, and I'm an Osceola taxpayer and Torch Lake Township taxpayer. I support Karen Ham's public comment that she just made. I think it needs to be looked at by the school board and reported back to an open May meeting of the school board. Oh, I can't take a drink. Karen is so valued that by the current students that I have heard that the 2020 and 2021 Dollar Bay yearbook will be dedicated to Karen. And I think that's wonderful, Karen.
Thank you.
18 months ago, I received a letter from Mrs. Norland called a no trespass directive, which was not merited and remains in place today. As of today, April 19th, 2021, the ban has not been rescinded or revoked. This morning, April 19th, 2021, I received an email from you, Mrs. Norland, stating, and I quote your words from your email to me this morning, quote, while videotaping participants, I moved about the room and stood close to the speakers, unquote. Mrs. Norland, you were not at the March meeting, and you were misinformed about my behavior. I recorded from my spaced apart seat during the meeting. I did not, I repeat, I did not leave my seat any time during the meeting, including when I recorded. Similarly, to the no trespass directive of 18 months ago, you, Mrs. Norland, have accused me of disruptive behavior without even asking me if it is true. This is touching the heart of my being treated unfairly by you, Mrs. Norland, and the school board, who's standing by your decision, your unjust decision. Switching subjects, I have learned that several parts of the process of the superintendent's annual evaluation performance or annual performance evaluation are not being followed. Why is this process listed on the school board's website and not being followed? That would be the evaluation tool that requires several portions of the evaluation process to be conducted during an open portion of the public school board meeting. Why is it not? I have learned that the school board is not doing a fair, vigorous, and transparent evaluation based on public records. Additionally, I would suggest that school board members educate themselves on how to use the superintendent evaluation scoring tool as required by the state of Michigan. Why are the school board members not being trained? In closing, I have 6 statements. 1, the no trespass ban on Christian and I needs to be removed. 2, the school board needs to be trained in using the superintendent's evaluation tool. 3, the evaluation tool requires that several portions of the superintendent's evaluation process be conducted during the open portion of the public school meeting. 4, I object to the vote that the school board members are going to take this evening to vote on Mrs. Norland's superintendent's 2020 and 2021 evaluation based on inflated scoring and the non-transparent process. 5, the statements that Karen Anderson-Ham has made should be looked into and reported back to the open session of the May school board meeting. And lastly, 6, I would like you, Mrs. Norland, to refrain from accusing me of disruptive behavior without hearing or considering my side of the story. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other public comment tonight?
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the consent agenda. We're gonna go to the previous month, that's written the previous month.
And do we have a motion for that?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, and I'll support. Okay, any discussion on them? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to superintendent, principal report.
And Tyler is not here tonight. He did not have much or anything to report, so he is not with us this evening. But I actually have quite a lengthy report tonight, and we'll start with the athletic director's report. This comes from Sarah Moylan. Spring sports are underway. We will have our first golf meet, and practices are in full swing for track and golf. We're gonna have our first golf meet at the end of the month, and track meets will begin in May. All schedules are viewable on the school website, Google Calendar. Elementary basketball is wrapping up their season this week, and COVID antigen testing as mandated by the MBHHS started last week and is going fine. We do have, Zach asked about this, we do have a few parents who have opted their children out of athletics because of the testing. The new padding has been installed in the gym and it looks fantastic. Huge thanks to Jay Pelcher for donating their time and talent on the installation, and the DPTC Sports Boosters Club for spearheading the project to improve the aesthetics and safety of our gymnasium. Getting a lot of positive feedback on those new wall pads. The 2021 sports banquet date has been set for Tuesday, June 8th. Due to restrictions, a meal will not be possible, but we look forward to celebrating all of the hard work, dedication, and success of our wonderful athletes and coaches. So that is a report from Sarah. And just adding a little bit about the antigen testing, that is required by the MDHHS and the MHSAA, and how we're doing that is Monday mornings as athletes come into the school. They come to a separate room, this room actually, and swab their nose with a Q-tip, and then Sarah and I are there and we put little droplets into the card that the testing happens upon, and the Q-tip goes in there, and then 15 minutes later we have a positive or negative result. So far, all negative, thank goodness. And we are sad that we do have some athletes, as I said, who aren't able to participate because of that antigen testing. And there's certainly a lot of debate across the state about the testing, and among local schools, there's quite a bit of conversation. And I would add my enthusiastic support to the big thanks to Jay Pelcher, and the boosters for the new padding. As I said, it's quite impressive. It looks great. We're really proud to have that in our gym now. Okay, moving on to other topics. Graduation. The plan as of now is to hold graduation in our gym at 10 a.m. on the Saturday before Memorial Day. So we are hoping that is going to be possible. If there are new, more stringent requirements put in place prior to that time, then we will have it outdoors. As of now, the tentative plan is to actually hold it in our new parking lot. That was shared by a parent, that a good suggestion. That way we have the internet here for this building to broadcast it, and we do have Kristen Oyemidi, who's willing to do that again this year. She's the one who did that for us last year. And hoping for the best for graduation. Did I miss anything? Any questions on graduation? Okay. Then you might have seen a little story that TV6 recently did on the Tower Gardens in the lobby. Carrie Meneguzzo and Jay Babcock are responsible for those. They're really impressive, very green, very light. So that was neat to see a story done on those. Summer school. Most years we have a summer school program that is the 3 weeks following school, led by Mr. O'Connor. And this year we will be extending that for 8 weeks because the state is offering support to schools who are offering an 8-week summer program. Tentative plans are for that to be, again, led by Mr. O'Connor, but Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays for 8 weeks for students who need credit recovery or who need help passing one of the core classes. Custodial needs has been a big topic of conversation. And recently in our trying to look more deeply at this issue, we learned that according to the National Center for Education Statistics, there is a 5-tier system that people use for estimating custodial required time at schools. And there are five different tiers of basically acceptable cleanliness, and 2 and 3 are the ones that would mainly pertain to a school, 2 being the cleanliness level you'd expect in a bathroom or kitchen, and 3 being what people would find acceptable for classrooms, just generally clean. And according to the NCES, level 2 cleaning requires of an 8-hour-a-day custodian 18,000 to 20,000. 18,000 to 20,000 square feet at that level would require 8 hours of a custodian. Level 3, if we had 28 to 30,000 square feet, an 8-hour custodian would be able to clean that. And with our new school improvements and new areas that we have in the school, we have 78,586 square feet, so just under 80,000. So Tyler was running some numbers on this. And basically with the custodial staff that we have, when we are all here, and of course we have been missing one of ours for a few months now, unfortunately, due to doctor's orders, we have 7 hours a day with one custodian, 7 hours a day with another custodian, and then our head custodian spends about 2 hours a day on custodial duties and the rest of his time on maintenance and other duties. And so that leaves us about 7 hours a day short if we were at the high end of the amount of time that it took for the level 3, and about 19 hours a day short if at level 2. So I've mentioned this to some people in passing, and a lot of people in the school will verify that that there's a real need for some additional custodial help. So As you know, that in the absence of our one custodian who has had to be out, we have done a few different things. We've had a previous student come by who I was pointed to by a family member, and he's been helpful when we've needed him. That's not a permanent solution. We have had UP janitorial fill in some, and that was helpful, but also not a permanent solution. And so what we would like to do is post for the additional position that we pretty clearly seem to need for an additional 7-hour-a-day custodial position. So, any questions on that by the board? Any discussion at this point?
We're talking about adding a position?
Yeah, that's what I would suggest based on the need that we currently have.
Budget, and how's that fit, and how's that gonna work?
Yep, it would cost, I believe it was 24,000 when Tyler ran those numbers today, if the person came in at the wage scale on the support staff handbook for first year custodian, which obviously they would. And it would be an additional chunk of money that we would have to add then to the maintenance and operations section of our budget. So, I would anticipate it would be a 9-month position, not a year-long position, which is what our other custodian who's currently out is at this point.
Which 3 months would they be off?
The summer months.
Okay.
Yeah, they would be here during the school year. Some ideas shared when just kind of discussing this here and there were that it might be possible to post for the position kind of as a temporary thing and maybe until summer or maybe partway through summer and see how it went, see what the needs were. But that was prior to learning this information with the square footage and the recommendations. So, I don't know, it's clear to a lot of us in the building that we have some significant need, because there just isn't the time to get to everything. And it's been, of course, exacerbated by the fact that we haven't had our person consistently here.
Yeah, my big concern is how do we pay for it? I mean, how does that fit into the budget? And how do we, what do we have to shuffle around or do to make it happen? So I guess I'd like to see some numbers on it before I vote yes or no.
On whether we can take something from here to add this position.
How are we gonna pay for it?
Mhm.
Comes down to that.
Okay, thoughts on what we can do in the meantime? So we're missing our person who had been a 7-hour-a-day person. We've patched it through with, like I said, a couple of temporary people. Our student who was a student several years ago is able to help a little bit here and there, just kind of giving a few hours as he can. Our UP janitorial guy just ended up going back to a previous job, so he just has said that he can no longer be with us, and UP janitorial is seeing if they can find someone else, but they don't have one currently. The other issue is it's just really hard to find people for any positions. You know, we posted for this a while ago kind of as a temporary thing, like I just suggested, and got several applications, but it seemed later on that maybe they were automatically generated or sent through Indeed, because every person that I contacted didn't respond whatsoever. So that kind of made us wonder whether those people really were looking for a job or were looking for something to prove that they could continue getting unemployment or something. That's what I've heard some people do sometimes. So our suggestion would be, if we did go with posting for this again, to do it in the Gazette, and hope that we would get some local people who were really looking. We would use Indeed again, but I've also asked the other superintendents if there are part-time people at those school districts who might be able to step over here a bit, and no takers that way either. Should we post it and then as a temporary thing, do you think, for now, going with that conservative suggestion?
Oh, it definitely needs something. We have to keep up with.
people,
Jeff
to be
speaking.
pure people. Just for whatever that's worth.
Agree. Were you gonna say something, Steve?
No,
Oh.
I was just kind of nodding.
I wouldn't apply for a temporary job. You know, I'd want something.
But the need is clear, we have to do something and then solve the budget problem when we get to that bridge.
Mhm.
But clearly we need the personnel first. See who we get and then find a way to
Make-
get them on the payroll.
Make the accommodation as to who we find.
Tyler did say that we do have, some additional funding coming in, and it's not permanent. It's not like we're adding to our per pupil allowance at this point, although it's anticipated that we will probably get a little bit of a hike in the per pupil allowance. But this money that we're getting can be, extended for a couple of years. It's again, COVID-related money, but it's completely flexible about how we do spend it. It is not really recommended that you use that for salary or wages, but in this case, as we're trying to figure this out, we could go that direction and use that chunk of money, and there is definitely enough there to cover that.
It seems like a custodial or cleaning position would fall right in line with COVID guidelines.
Well, and that's right, and that's frankly one of the reasons that we're so strapped, because Brian is spending a good chunk of his day walking around sanitizing. And, it takes time in various areas of the building to get that job done. So the board doesn't have to make a decision on hiring at this point, so I think unless, people strongly object, I'll go ahead and post for that, and then we'll see what happens. Maybe we still will not even get anybody, and I don't know, look for some
Well,
ideas.
At the same time, just, get with Tyler and see how we can budget this thing. I mean, if the COVID money is budgeted for 2 years, that's one option, I guess, or we look at it from that direction, but I think it's important that we have figure out how we're gonna pay for it, whatever that is.
That's not gonna hurt to post, and
Donna?
it's essential, we don't have a choice, it's like we gotta do this.
Okay, all right, thanks for the feedback. Okay, on to totally different topics. Standardized testing season is upon us. Last week, we had the SAT on Tuesday at the Baptist Church, so we thank them again for sharing their space with us, and the PSAT test happened here in the building. Mrs. Butler did a fantastic job of running those exams. And the Wednesday ACT work keys happened at the Baptist Church as well. That went well too. And then starting this week, we have M-STEPS. That's the Michigan standardized test that we all use now, and that is kind of over a several week-long period of time, and those are administered on Chromebooks. So testing season is here. I mentioned difficulty filling positions a minute ago, and we have posted for teaching positions and are not seeing a lot of response. Unfortunately, there are fewer and fewer applicants for teaching positions. We did receive 5 applications for the English teacher position that we have open, 2 applications for the preschool teacher position, and none for special education, and none for woodshop. Mr. Rob Rowe is our woodshop teacher. He's fantastic, has kind of been saying and has indicated that he would be okay with moving on from coming here for a couple hours every single day, and I think his wife would be okay with that too. He hasn't definitively said that he's done, because he does enjoy the students a lot, but seems like it's a direction that his life is heading in his retirement. So he said, yeah, go ahead and post for the position and we'll see what comes up. So far, nobody, but maybe in filling one of these other positions, we will miraculously find somebody who would be able to teach the woodshop job as well as the rest of those content areas that we need them for. So preschool, the licensing process is well underway. We have our application in, and the health department was here last week doing a study of this area that we're in right now. I met with some local experts on Great Start Readiness programs last Friday, and there is so much to learn. It's really difficult to express, a lot of fine print, a lot of red tape, but we're just moving forward through it. It'll be really nice when we do hire a teacher, so that that person can help with that process, hopefully on a part-time basis at first. We did have a really strong interest in our new preschool, with 22 people who registered already would like to be in the class. The maximum capacity of the class is 16, but with Great Start Readiness programs, it depends on various factors. Age is an important one. You have to have a birthday within the correct time frame, and family income is a really important factor as well. So we don't necessarily get a say in who's able to officially enroll in the preschool. It's going to come down to those factors. So it's really great to have that kind of interest, and kindergarten enrollment is also happening, and we already have 20 on that list. And normally we do a kindergarten experience day where small groups of students come and play with the current kindergartners at centers for a short period of time. This year, due to COVID, we of course can't do that, so we are opening it up to family tours, so the kindergartner and parents can come in at a time that works for them, and I will be happy to show them around the school and introduce them to the teacher, and hopefully that will meet people's needs to see the friendly face of the teacher and get familiar with the building, and then at that time, then Danielle will take their paperwork and make copies, and we'll be on our way. Good news in food service, we have had consistently high numbers, 100 off in a day for breakfast